Hello and welcome back, adventurers. This is Captain TTRPG, and today we're talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Welcome back, adventurers. Today we are going to rank the subclasses for the Gunslinger. Before jumping into the rankings, I'll show you the criteria I use for ranking subclasses. This will be a quick refresher if you've watched the Alchemist or the Druid ranking videos, but still useful, I think, to talk about it. So on screen right now, you can see my criteria. I'll be ranking the subclasses from S to D. The subclasses are going to be ranked against each other, not other classes, so it's not how well is this subclass going to rank up against, say the animal order druid or something. Instead, it's just against your own class. S means a subclass that is clearly mechanically stronger for combat than other subclasses while not falling behind in other pillars of play. This is a subclass that becomes kind of the default or the right way to play the class. We don't see this a lot in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but it can come up. So I just want to put that out there. An A-rank subclass is one that will be strong in combat in any adventure. It's not only strong on its own, but it makes the team stronger as well. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a cooperative team-based game, and good subclasses take advantage of that. Also, it leans into the strengths of the class, including its social or exploration benefits that the class itself already has. A B subclass is mechanically strong on its own, or does a good job of boosting the rest of the party, but usually not both. It might be especially strong in certain campaigns, but not others. It may also land here because it doesn't do a great job of leaning into what the class is best at, or lacks versatility outside of combat alone. C is a subclass that lands here because it's just not that strong in combat in most campaigns, or at least no better than like the base class without a subclass. It might not take advantage of the specialty that the class has. D is a subclass that I suggest you avoid. It either detracts from the base class in some way, or it's almost like bait, where it's going to lead you into a playstyle that isn't fun, or it just struggles to find success. So D is something I highly recommend you very carefully consider before picking up as your choice of subclass. All right, with that, let's go ahead and dive into the Gunslinger subclasses. With Gunslingers, between Guns and Gears and Impossible Lands, we have 5 subclasses to rank. These are referred to as the Ways, and those ways are Drifter, Pistolero, Sniper, Triggerbrand, and Vanguard. I'll walk through each way, discuss its strengths, combat and counterplay styles, benefits to other pillars of play, and fit for the class before giving my final ranking. So what benefits do you get for having a way? If you watched my Gunslinger video, then this is kind of a recap, but I think it's good to go over. So for every way, you will get a way skill that you become trained in. You'll get your Slinger's Reload, which is a special one-action reload option that allows for some action compression. You'll get your Initial Deed, which is a combination of a free action at the start of combat and another benefit for the first round of combat. Your Advanced Deed, which is an upgrade to your Initial Deed that you'll get at level 9, and your Greater Deed, which is really kind of the capstone for your way. There are also feats. Each way has 2 feats that require that specific way in order to take them, one at level 6 and one at level 14. So we'll talk about those as well. I'll put less value on the Greater Deed due to how late it comes online, but it still falls into my ranking. Well, let's go ahead and jump in here then with the first way, which is the Drifter. Guns are great, but guns and swords are better. This is a dual-wielding melee plus gun combo. By the way, I'm going to talk about guns a lot. You can use hand crossbows or crossbows for your gun choices. It's not always just guns, so if you want to be a crossbow, but I'm going to keep calling them guns, referring to guns just because that's, I think, the most common way to play a gunslinger. So what is your way skill? You get trained in acrobatics. It suits the class really well. You're already going to be dex-based, so you may have already considered taking acrobatics. This way, you just get it for free. So no thoughts there. Your Slinger's Reload. You can reload for free when you strike with your melee weapon. This allows you to ignore the need for a free hand to reload. So if you're up close, you already took a shot with your pistol and you want to slash with, a short sword or something, you get to reload while you slash at them, which is fantastic action compression. Your Advanced Deed is that you gain a wholly new action. When you miss with a ranged weapon, meaning your gun in this case most of the time, you can use this action to make a melee attack with your other weapon using the same multiple attack penalty your previous missed range attack had. So this really helps you shore up, especially with your way to reload. If you happen to, fire with a pistol, then you run up and you happen to miss that, then suddenly you're attacking as if you hadn't even taken an attack this turn when you're using your melee weapon, and you get to reload. It's a really nice use of all of this together when you're going that kind of in and out style of combat. Greater Deed, you gain a 3-action activity called Drifter's Wake. You stride and make 3 attacks at any point during that stride, but all must be against different enemies. Your attacks have to be made with either your one-handed gun/crossbow or your melee weapon, and your multiple attack penalty doesn't increase until after you've made all 3 attacks, and then it increases to account for all 3. That's just a lot of attacks you get to do at your highest chance to hit, which keep in mind, if you're using your gun, that's an extremely high chance because you get that extra +2 to your chance to hit from being a gunslinger using a gun. But even with your melee weapon, as long as it's a finesse weapon, you're going to attack at least as well as other martials. So this is a really strong way to use multiple attacks. The only downside is it's not against a single enemy, but maybe that's okay. So what are the 2 feats available? At 6, there is Drifter's Juke. For 2 actions, you get to step, then strike, then step, then strike. You can ignore either or both of the steps. So you don't have to step if you don't want to, if you want. And the strikes must be with one with your ranged weapon and one with your melee weapon. But this can be a great way to avoid reaction attacks, as you may be up close. You might strike, step back, fire, and then step back again. Just give yourself a little extra distance, or maybe you want to get back up, fire, step, strike, step back. Some order like that. It always allows you to position yourself well to at least make the enemy work to come get you. At level 14, you get Disruptive Blur as a passive buff. After you strike with your ranged weapon, your movement for the rest of the turn doesn't trigger reactions. Again, really helpful with an in and out play style, which is really what you're doing with this subclass most of the time. Yeah, the Drifter really is all about the in and out. Because you're combining melee and ranged, you won't fall into the same crit or nothing problem that a purely ranged gunslinger can sometimes run into. Mobility is far more necessary for the Drifter than any other way, I think. But with the feats and deeds, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. They're really helping you with that. I should also mention that there is a feat at level 1 that doesn't technically require the Drifter, but it's probably best for the Drifter. There are some other ones later that can use it, called Sword and Pistol. It's a rotating buff where if you go back and forth between attacking with a melee weapon and a ranged weapon, they buff each other back and forth as you constantly move between them, which is great for this playstyle that it's already encouraging. With all of this, you're still not getting a lot outside of the straight combat. You're not getting really anything to buff up your exploration or social side of it, not even a skill proficiency that helps with that. But because it's so good at what it's trying to do at the combat side of it, and it does offer you an interesting playstyle more so than some of, I think, the other subclasses here, I still think, for me, this is a B rank subclass. We're done with melee weapons for the moment. Let's jump into the Pistolero. One-handed guns are still on the docket, but whether it's 1 or 2 of them, it's ranged all the time. Your way skill is Deception or Intimidation, giving you an option. Something charisma focused, something that could be used for the social aspect of the game. Your reload is Recounter's Reload. You can either create a distraction or demoralize a creature while you reload. It's often beneficial to frighten creatures, more so than creating distractions, but both are really valuable. So I think this is an amazing reload option. Your initial deed is that when you roll for initiative, you get a +2 circumstance bonus to your initiative roll, which is already fantastic. And you get to equip one of your one-handed weapons. So if you are going to dual wield, you don't get to equip both for free at the start. But then again, maybe you were just holding to begin with. On your first turn in combat, you get to step up to 10 feet as a free action if it's your first action. This can be great if for some reason you started up close with somebody. I think if it was starting as a social encounter that triggered into this, but also just helps you position yourself without having to spend too many actions moving. Your advanced deed is that you gain a new reaction. If a creature critically fails at a strike against you anywhere within your first range increment for one of your guns, you're willing, you get to take a shot at that creature as a reaction, which means maximum chance to crit, because again, you've got no penalty at this point if it's on their turn. Critical failures do happen, And this is just a nice little damage boost, especially since it doesn't have to be against a melee-only weapon, or enemy. So if you've got somebody within the range increment of your gun, they're ranged as well, they critically fail to attack you, great, you can just fire back at them. Greater Deed, you gain a 2-action activity called a Grim Swagger. It lets you use either Deception or Intimidation against all enemies within 30 feet of you. Any creature that you succeed against will be frightened 2, and a crit success is frightened 3 and fleeing for a round. This is a massive debuff, and being immune to Demoralize doesn't prevent it. Yeah, a creature can only be affected once every 10 minutes, but that doesn't diminish how powerful a control tool this really is. Feats. At level 6, you get Pistolero's Challenge. For 1 action, you effectively start a duel with a creature. Each of you gains bonuses to strikes made against the other. There is a check involved to trigger this, and after using it on a creature, they're immune until noon the next day. Very thematic. But it is a nice little bonus, assuming you're fine taking somebody one-on-one. Come At Me is your 14th level feat. Normally, you can only have 1 challenge out at a time, Pistolero's challenge, that is. This allows you to have as many Pistolero challenges as you like. So you really want to get extra damage against 4 targets and let them all have bonuses against you? You can do that. Maybe not the most critical feat, but Pistolero's challenge is pretty interesting. The Pistolero has very useful skills, plus its attack playstyle is also pretty useful. You will never not get value out of your Intimidation or Deception skills, both in combat and in the social side of play, unless you're fighting mindless creatures, of course, but we're not going to worry about that here. You make a great ally. You're constantly causing negative conditions to enemies. The special effects available aren't amazing in my mind. Sorry, the special feats available aren't amazing in my mind, so you might just want to ignore those. Maybe you pick up Pistolero's Challenge. The feats that do pop up for the Pistolero that can technically be taken by any way, but really benefit the most, are the dual wielding feats. Things like reloading while dual wielding, or firing both ranged weapons at once and combining their damage. There are feats for both of those. Very, very strong with the Pistolero. Even without that, though, given all that you can do to control the battlefield and the skills you've got, a nice combination of charisma plus dexterity, this really feels like an A subclass to me. All right, time to lock in on a single target, though, as the sniper. Let's grab a gun with a long range and hit from somewhere they can't see us. Your way skill is Stealth, makes complete sense here. You get covered reload. You can either take cover or hide, then reload. You still need to meet the normal requirements for those actions, by the way. You don't just get to do them because you said you did them. At least you can take them as part of your reload action. Your initial deed is that when you roll for initiative, you get to equip your gun. And then on your first turn in combat, your first strike does 1d6 extra precision damage. It'll be 2d6 at 9th level and 3d6 at 15th level. Keep in mind that it's just for your first shot in combat. Your advanced deed is that you gain a new 2-action activity. You make a ranged attack, and if the target is off guard, the creature takes an extra damage die, and you deal persistent bleed damage equal to the damage of your initial deed. So again, 1d6 up until level 9th, or once you're, now that you are 9th, it'll be 2d6. That's a lot of bleed damage to be able to trigger there. Thanks to your stealth, there's a good chance you've got creatures off guard, but if not, there's lots of ways that creatures are made off guard by allies as well. The bleed damage here is great, and so is just the extra damage die. Your greater deed, you gain a 1-action strike that can deal more damage. If you're hidden or undetected by your target, you get to add your initial deed damage when you hit. This can't be doubled up, and after you attack, you are now hidden from all targets. You used to be undetected too. This is pretty situational, because I can't imagine there's a ton of times when you're going to be undetected. Being hidden is somewhat reliable for you. All right, the feats. At level 6, you get Sniper's Aim. For 2 actions, you make a more careful strike. Make a single strike with a +2 circumstance bonus to hit, and you ignore concealment, which means no flat check, right? Normally a concealed creature you have to make a flat check against before you can target it. Not with this. Finally, if you're using a kickback weapon, you could ignore the kickback trait. The reason that's brought up is kickback does happen a fair amount of the time on really strong, powerful, long-ranged weapons that you might want to use as a sniper. They do require, though, a certain amount of strength to wield. Only being able to use Sniper's Aim with one, though, seems pretty limiting, so that's almost a throwaway. I would say really what you care about here is the +2 chance to hit, which, again, you already have an incredible chance to crit. This is even better. And the ignoring concealment, which can make it really hard You don't want to lose a flat check against a concealed creature. Snipers are here to make well-placed shots, often once per turn. This fits a few specific fantasies and is often a go-to for new players. It feels like an easy one to set up. Hey, I know how to take a shot from a hidden place or be far away. All gunslingers have an issue with big discrepancies between hit and crit damage, but this feels especially bad for snipers. Outside of damage, also, there isn't a whole lot of support or utility here. You hide extra well, but you're a gunslinger. You're probably taking stealth anyway. High dex, you're hiding pretty well anyway. Having high stealth can be useful in exploration, but again, being a gunslinger means you're probably already good at it. At least the drifter can flank with allies. Snipers don't even have that. Finally, there's really no extra feats that fit the sniper really well like we had with our previous 2 ways. All that being said, for me, really, a sniper is just a C. Time to get out from behind cover and get right up in your face with the Triggerbrand. The name isn't as obvious, but this is your gun sword user. Because a weapon with just one function, it's just never enough. Quick sidebar about combination weapons. The trait combination means that the given weapon can be changed between different modes. And usually this means between a ranged mode and a melee mode. Swapping function is a one-action interact action, but if your last action was a successful melee strike with the weapon, you can immediately use an action to fire the ranged version of the weapon against the same creature, after which the weapon is considered back in melee mode. Finally, keep in mind that when you're attacking with the melee version, you have to use strength for the attack roll unless it is a finesse weapon, which there are some finesse combination weapons, but just something to keep in mind. Your way skill is Thievery, kind of an interesting one. It's great to be able to pick locks. It's nice. It has some nice out of combat utility. Great fit for your high dex, and now there's actually a good way to use it in combat as well, thanks to the remaster. Your reload is Touch and Go. You have to have a combination weapon equipped, but as long as you do, and you will as a Triggerbrand, then you get to step, swap weapon function, and reload all as one action, which is kind of nuts. Your initial deed is that when you roll initiative, you get to equip your combination weapon. It's pretty much standard stuff here. On your first turn in combat, all of your movement and ranged attacks get to not trigger reactions that would normally be triggered by them. And this includes your ranged attack. This can be great against creatures that have reactive strike, but not every creature has that. There may be a lot of creatures that can't do anything about you moving anyway or firing in close range, so a little more situational than some of the other initial deeds. Your advanced deed is you gain a 2-action activity. You make a melee strike with your combo weapon and then make a thievery check at a -5 against the creature. If your thievery check succeeds, not only do you get to steal something from the creature is now off guard to your ranged attacks until the start of your next turn. Another bonus is that until the start of your next turn, that creature also can't use reactions that would normally be triggered by movement or ranged attacks. Keep in mind that because the melee strike is part of the 2-action activity, if the melee strike hits, you can make a ranged attack as your next action without having to actually swap due to the way combination weapons work. Your greater deed is you gain another 2-action activity. This time you make a melee strike followed by a ranged strike with your combo weapon. Both are made at your current penalty level. So if it's your first thing you're doing on your turn attack-wise, then they'll both be at your maximum chance to hit. Your multiple attack penalty will increase to account for both afterward, though. If both hit, you get to deal an extra 2d6 persistent bleed damage, during which the creature is dazzled for as long as it bleeds. That's a lot built into this 2-action activity. The feats you get Triggerbrand Salvo. For 1 action, you make a melee strike against a creature. If that hits, you immediately make a ranged strike against the same with a +2 circumstance bonus to hit chance, which is absolutely nuts, making your crit chance so very high. Your multiple attack penalty isn't applied until after both, but yes, this is a flourish, so this is only once per turn. Still, absolutely nuts. At level 14, Triggerbrand Blitz, that's easy to say. For 3 actions, you stride and make up to 3 strikes. Sounds familiar from one of our previous classes. Previous subclasses, previous ways. Anyway, swapping your weapons mode as you like, but only one can be a ranged strike. Multiple attack penalty doesn't apply until after all 3 strikes. This sounds great, but you do have to do them all against different creatures, just like we had with the Drifter. And afterward, in this case, you are fatigued, which lowers your AC and saving throws by 1 until your next night's sleep. That's a huge drawback that the Drifter didn't have. Triggerbrands live in a pretty similar space to Drifters, honestly, and you can kind of tell from some of the things that came up here. They want to be in and out, melee range. You're going to focus almost exclusively on damage. They do gain some versatility with thievery, but you don't leverage it that much in combat. There is, again, a skill feat you can take that might help you quite a bit here. A huge issue for the Triggerbrand is the somewhat limited set of combination weapons. There's just not a ton of them. Also, there are challenges in using some of the feats or deeds that are specific to the subclass. When it comes right down to it, though, similar playstyles to the Drifter, a little better in some ways, a little more challenging in others. It lands in the same B area for me. From one up close and personal Gunslinger to another, we're going to finish on the Vanguard. To use this subclass, you will need to wield a two-handed gun or crossbow, which is the first time we've seen that requirement. Your way skill is athletics, which fits this quite well. While not dexterity based, this is definitely a subclass that's going to want to boost your strength as high as you can. So it's going to be a dex then strength kind of situation. And then you can probably take pretty good advantage of athletics. Your reload is clear a path for a single action. You shove a creature within melee range and then reload your weapon. If your last action was a ranged attack with the gun or crossbow, you get to use the same multiple attack penalty that had for your shove. Also, if you have any potency runes on that weapon, you get to use the same potency rune bonus to your shove, which is really, really nice. Your initial deed is that when you roll initiative, you get to equip your gun, same thing, nothing crazy there, we're used to it, but you also get to raise it in front of yourself. This gives you a +1 bonus to AC until the start of your next turn, or +2 if the weapon has the parry trait on it. I don't know that a lot of two-handed guns do, but even the +1 to AC is nice. So you're really just prepping yourself for taking damage in that first round since you want to be up close and personal. Your advanced deed is that you gain a new 3-action activity. You become a Cyclone of Steel and Death. For 3 actions, you spin and each creature adjacent to you must make a basic reflex save. You deal 4d6 plus your strength modifier to all creatures, which increases by 2d6 for each level of striking rune you have on the weapon. At this point, you should have at least a basic striking rune. So it says we're level 9. So you're looking at, another 66 instead of that. Eventually you'll be doing 86 with a greater striking rune not long after this. Your greater deed. You gain another 2-action activity. Your gun must have the kickback or scatter trait, or you have to be wielding a 2-handed crossbow. Almost all of the 2-handed guns do have either kickback or scatter or both, so it's not actually a hard requirement. For the 2 actions, you stride or leap, keep in mind your athletics there, and then strike. If you hit, you deal an extra 3d6 bludgeoning damage, and you get to ignore 10 hardness from the target if it does have any. The restrictive side is that once you finish using this, you are immobilized until the start of your next turn. You'll gain a +1 AC bonus until then, or +2 if your weapon had the parry trait. And normally I'd say being immobilized is not great, but in this case, it means the chance that something will be able to move you in any way is also very, very low because you simply cannot be moved in this situation. So nice little bonuses to AC after doing this. Just really plan it out well and time it. Know the battlefield. Your feats at level 6, you can take Phalanx Breaker. For 2 actions, you make a ranged strike against a creature within your first range increment with your weapon, which sometimes 2-handed weapons don't have great range, but a lot of times they have really good range. On a hit, you push the creature back 10 feet. No save, they just get pushed back. 20 feet on a crit. So 10 was just on a hit. If it ends up being pushed into something, the creature also takes damage equal to half your level. So feels like in a lot of situations, this could be really cool, assuming that you're in combat where there's stuff to knock enemies into. At 14, you've got Blast Tackle. Your weapon must have the kickback or scatter trait, again, like we saw with your greater deed. Or it must be a 2-handed crossbow. For 2 actions, you grapple a creature within reach, dropping 1 hand off your weapon to do so. If you succeed, you can then immediately stick your gun against the creature and fire. You'll have to actually take the multiple attack penalty since you did grapple first, and this is a second attack after that. But still, if your attack hits, you deal an additional 3d6 precision damage. You can even reload and continue to strike that creature with only one hand as long as you keep it grappled. So assuming you've really leaned into that athletics, this is amazing control and damage all put together. The Vanguard is definitely an oddball amongst this mix, but it's not a bad one. Much of the value relies on your strength, which won't keep up perfectly, but it won't be far off, and as long as you keep boosting athletics, you'll probably be in a really good place. The athletics value is that it's not just helping you, it's that you're able to help your allies as well. You can grapple by just dropping a hand off your gun, or if you can find a two-handed gun with the grapple trait, I guess you could do it that way too. The small bonuses to AC aren't amazing, but any +1 does still help. And given the versatility it brings to the table, the fact that you can be up in melee and do quite a bit from there, still hurt from range because you can take big guns with really good range, I honestly think this is an A subclass in my mind. I was back and forth on it, but I do think it is. Up on the screen now, you can see the full chart with the rankings. You'll see that the subclasses overall fared pretty well. Nothing D, but also nothing S, which in my mind is good on both counts. I know I'm likely to get a lot of feedback about that C I gave the sniper, but I'm thinking about what it offers and the playstyle. It's just not compelling at all. I just don't recommend it. What do you think about these rankings? Would you have placed anything in S or D? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I am going to likely continue to tweak the way I do these ranking videos in particular, but you should go play Gunslinger. And as always, adventure on.